The sky above burned orange and red. Smoke rose from the great cities that had stood for thousands of years. The people ran through the streets, screaming and crying as fire fell from above. They had no weapons. They had no soldiers. They had only their books, their art, and their prayers. Ambassador stood on the balcony of the Grand Archive, watching her world die. She was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 delicate arms. Her people had lived in peace for 3,000 years. They had forgotten what war looked like. Now they were learning again, and the lesson was cruel. They had come without warning. Their black ships had filled the sky like a swarm of insects. Their soldiers had poured out onto the streets, 8 feet tall with natural armor covering their bodies and claws that could tear through metal. They killed without mercy. They destroyed without reason. And they laughed while doing it. Watched a warship hover over the Museum of Ancient Arts. A beam of light shot down and the building exploded. 10,000 years of history turned to dust in seconds. She fell to her knees and wept. Ambassador, her assistant called from inside. "We must go, they are coming this way." Did not move. What was the point of running? Where could they go? They controlled the skis. Their ships surrounded the planet. There was no escape. But then she remembered something. Deep in the basement of the Grand Archive, there was an old machine. It had been built long ago before they had chosen peace. It was a beacon, designed to send messages across the stars. No one had used it in centuries. Most people had forgotten it existed. She stood up and ran inside. Her assistant followed, confused. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To call for help," she said. They descended into the basement, past rows of ancient books and artifacts. The beacon sat in a dusty corner, covered in cobwebs, wiped the dust away and activated it. The machine hummed to life, its lights flickering weakly. She pressed the transmit button and spoke. "This is Ambassador of the Collective. We are under attack. They are destroying our world. We have no military. We have no way to fight back. Our people are dying. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we need help. We are begging you, please help us." She sent the message and waited. Nothing happened. No response came. She sent it again and again and again. Still nothing. Her assistant touched her shoulder gently. "Ambassador, no one will come. The galaxy does not work that way. Species do not help each other without expecting something in return. We have nothing to offer." Knew he was right. In all their studies of other civilizations, they had learned this truth. The strong conquered the weak. The rich exploited the poor. Kindness without profit was a fantasy. But she kept sending the message anyway, because hope was all she had left. 17 star systems away, the message reached a small monitoring station on the edge of human space. Lieutenant Casey Morgan was drinking coffee and watching the sensors when the alert came through. She almost ignored it. The station received hundreds of signals every day, most of them garbage. But something made her look closer. The translation software processed the signal, and her eyes went wide. "Sir," she said, turning to Commander Frank, "you need to hear this." Walked over and listened. His face grew serious. "Get me a line to Earth Command," he said. "Priority 1. 6 hours later, the message reached the leaders of humanity. They gathered in a secure room and debated what to do. They were strangers. Humanity had never made contact with them. They were far away and they were dangerous. Helping them would cost lives and resources. Some argued they should stay out of it. It was not their fight. They had their own problems to deal with. But others disagreed. "They called for help," Admiral said. She was old and tired with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had seen too many wars in her lifetime. "They are dying and they called for help. If we ignore them, what does that say about us?" The debate continued for hours. In the end, a decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. Colonel Danny, the Admiral's nephew, received his orders aboard the TSS Relentless. He gathered his officers in the briefing room and showed them the tactical data. "The is under attack by the," he explained. They are a predator species. They have conquered 11 civilizations in the past 100 years. They are brutal, efficient, and they do not take prisoners. Captain Lisa studied the numbers. Sir, we will be outnumbered at least 5-1, maybe more. I know, said. We have no treaty with no alliance, no economic ties, we have no reason to help them. I know that too. Looked at him, then why are we going? Was quiet for a moment. He thought about the message, about the fear in the ambassador's voice, about the desperation. He thought about his aunt and what she had said. Because they asked, he said finally. Because they are dying and they asked for help, and because we are the only ones who answered. No one in the room argued. No one asked to be reassigned. They were Terran Marines. This was what they did. The Relentless and her escort ships jumped to hyperspace. The journey would take 18 hours. Use that time to prepare his troops. Sergeant Tony gathered his platoon in the cargo bay. They were young, most of them fresh from training, but they were eager and brave. Listen up, said. In a few hours, we are going to drop onto a planet we have never seen, to fight an enemy we have never faced, to protect people we have never met. Some of you might not come back. I am not going to lie to you about that. The soldiers listened in silence. But here is what I want you to remember. Those people down there, they have no one else. They sent a message into the void, hoping someone would hear, and we heard. We are their only hope. So when we hit that ground, we fight like our lives depend on it, because theirs do. Private Maria Santos gripped her rifle tightly. She was 22 years old, the daughter of immigrants, the first in her family to serve in the military. She was scared, but she was also proud. Corporal Ben checked his equipment for the 10th time. He had a wife back home, a baby daughter he had only held once. He wanted to see them again, but he also wanted to be the kind of man his daughter could look up to. Sergeant Drake reviewed the tactical maps. She had fought in 3 campaigns before this one. She knew what war looked like. She knew the cost, but she also knew why it mattered. The clock counted down. The ships flew through the void, and on they continued to die, still hopping, still praying, still waiting for someone to answer their call. They did not know that help was coming. They did not know that a species they had never met was racing across the stars to save them. They did not know that humanity had heard their cry. But they would learn soon enough. The Marines were coming. Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the planet burn below. He was pleased. The conquest had been easy, almost boring. They had no fight in them. They ran and hid and begged for mercy. It was pathetic. Had conquered 3 worlds before this one. He considered himself an expert in breaking civilizations. First, you destroyed their military. Then you destroyed their infrastructure. Then you destroyed their hope. After that, they belonged to you. They had skipped straight to the 3rd stage. They had no military to destroy. Their cities fell like paper. Their people surrendered without resistance, was almost disappointed. Commander, his sensor officer called out, "We are detecting incoming vessels." Waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Probably escape ships. Destroy them." "Sir, they are not. The signatures are unknown." Turned sharply. Unknown. That was impossible. He knew every species in this sector. None of them would dare interfere with business. "Show me," he demanded. The main screen displayed the approaching ships. There were 6 of them, 1 large carrier and 5 smaller escort vessels. They moved in tight formation, fast and aggressive. "Hail them," ordered. "Tell them this system is under control. They will leave or be destroyed." The communications officer sent the message. There was no response. "Sir, they are not slowing down. They are increasing speed." Before could respond, the unknown ships opened fire. The first volley of rail gun rounds tore through the blockade. 3 cruisers exploded in seconds. The others scrambled to return fire, but the attackers were already moving, weaving through the formation with impossible precision. gripped his command chair as his ship shook from a near hit. "Who are they? Identify them now." "Working on it, sir. The ship designs do not match any known species. Wait, we are receiving a transmission." A voice came through the speakers, calm and cold. "This is Colonel Danny of the Terran Marine Corps. You will cease your attack on the people immediately. You will withdraw your forces from this system. You have 5 minutes to comply. This is your only warning." Stared at the speaker in disbelief. Terran. He had never heard of them. How dare some unknown species threaten them? "Ignore them," he snarled. "All ships concentrate fire on the lead carrier, destroy it." The battle in orbit was fierce. They had numbers, but the Terrans had something else. They had centuries of warfare behind them. They had tactics refined through countless conflicts. They had soldiers who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. The TSS Relentless took hits but kept fighting. Her guns never stopped firing. Her pilots flew with reckless courage. And when they tried to flank her, the escort frigates cut them apart. Below, on the burning surface of the landing craft, descended through the smoke. Sergeant Tony was the first one out. He hit the ground running, rifle raised, eyes scanning for targets. Behind him came his platoon, spreading out into combat formation. The capital was in ruins. Buildings had collapsed. Fires burned everywhere. Bodies lay in the streets, civilians who had died running from monsters they could not fight. Felt anger rise in his chest. He pushed it down. Anger made you sloppy. He needed to stay focused. "Second squad, take the left flank," he ordered through his helmet radio. "Third squad right, first squad with me. We push straight up the main avenue." They moved through the city like ghosts, silent and deadly. The ground forces had grown comfortable. They were used to hunting unarmed civilians. They were not prepared for what came out of the smoke. The first patrol died without knowing what hit them, and his squad caught them in a crossfire. The aliens were big and strong, but bullets did not care about size. Private Maria Santos fired in controlled bursts just like she had been trained. Her targets fell. She felt nothing. There would be time for feelings later. Right now she had a job to do. Corporal Ben led his fire team around a collapsed building and surprised a group of soldiers who were dragging prisoners. He did not hesitate. He opened fire and his team followed. They died. The prisoners lived. One of them, a female with ash-covered skin and terrified eyes, looked at like he was a ghost. "Who are you?" she whispered. Did not have time to explain. "Get to cover and stay there. We will come back for you." Across the city, similar scenes played out. Marines appeared out of nowhere, striking fast and hard, then vanishing before they could respond. The aliens had never faced an enemy like this. They did not know how to react. Sergeant Drake led her squad into the ruins of the Grand Archive. Intelligence said important survivors might be hiding there. She moved carefully, checking corners, listening for sounds. She found them in the basement. About 30, mostly elderly and children, huddled together in the darkness. They screamed when they saw her. Drake removed her helmet so they could see her face. "It is okay," she said gently. "I am not going to hurt you. I am here to help." One of them stepped forward. She was tall and dignified despite the dirt and blood on her clothes. Drake recognized her from the briefing files. "Ambassador." "You heard my message," said. Her voice was full of wonder. "Yes, ma'am. We came as fast as we could." "But why? You do not know us. We have nothing to offer you." Drake smiled sadly. "You asked for help, that is enough." Did not understand. In her entire life, in all her studies of the galaxy, she had never encountered a species that helped others for free. It made no sense. But the soldiers in front of her were real. The sounds of battle outside were real. Help had come. She began to cry. Above the planet, the space battle continued to rage. They had regrouped and were pressing hard. The TSS Relentless was taking damage, her shields failing, her hull breached in multiple places. Captain Lisa stood on the bridge, issuing orders with calm precision. Redirect power from non-essential systems to forward shields. All gun crews focus fire on their command ships. Make them pay for every inch. Lieutenant Gregg worked frantically at his console. Captain, we have lost contact with Frigate 4. I think she is gone. Closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them and kept fighting. On the ground, Colonel had established a command post in a partially intact building. He coordinated the efforts of his scattered forces, directing them to critical points, organizing rescue operations, planning counterattacks. An official approached him nervously. "Colonel, I do not understand what is happening. Why are you here? What do you want from us?" Looked up from his tactical display. He was exhausted, running on adrenaline and coffee, but he managed a small smile. "Right now, I want you to survive. We can talk about everything else later." The official bowed his head. "Thank you. I do not know how to repay you." "You do not have to," said. "This is what we do." The battle had just begun. They would not give up easily. More fighting lay ahead, more death, more sacrifice. But for the first time since the invasion began, they had hope. Strangers had come from across the stars to save them. Strangers who asked for nothing in return. They did not know what to call this. They had no word for it. Humanity called it duty. 3 days had passed since the Terran Marines landed on. 3 days of fighting. 3 days of death. 3 days of small victories and terrible losses. They had been pushed back from the capital city, but they still controlled most of the planet. Their reinforcements were on the way. Commander had called for help, furious and humiliated that an unknown species had dared to challenge him. Colonel Danny knew they were running out of time. He had requested reinforcements too, but they were still days away. Until then, his Marines would have to hold the line. Ambassador had become his constant companion. She followed him through the ruined streets, watching everything, asking questions, trying to understand the strange creatures who had come to save her people. She watched a Marine named Private Santos share her food rations with a group of children. The children were scared and hungry. Santos smiled at them and showed them how to open the packages. She made funny faces until they laughed. Watched Corporal carry an injured elder on his back for 3 miles because there were no vehicles available. The elder was heavy and was tired, but he never complained. He just kept walking. She watched Sergeant Drake organize a medical station in a bombed-out building. The sergeant had no medical training, but she learned quickly. She bandaged wounds, held hands, whispered comfort to the dying. She cried when she thought no one was looking. "I do not understand your species," said to Colonel one evening. They were standing on a rooftop, watching the sun set over the burning city. Looked at her with tired eyes. "What do not you understand?" "Everything. The conquer because they are strong and others are weak. That makes sense. The merchants of trade assistance for resources. That also makes sense. Every species we have studied operates on self-interest, but you do not seem to follow this rule." Was quiet for a long moment. He thought about how to explain something that felt so natural to him. "Ambassador, humanity has a complicated history. We have done terrible things to each other. Wars that killed millions. Cruelty that would make the look gentle. For most of our existence, we were exactly what you expect, selfish, brutal, focused only on our own survival. What changed? We grew up, I guess, slowly, painfully. We started to realize that there is more to life than just surviving. We started to believe that helping others is not a weakness but a strength. Considered this. But there is no benefit to helping us. We cannot repay you. We have nothing you need." Smiled slightly. "That is not entirely true. We need something you have." "What?" "Proof that we are still the species we want to be. Proof that we have not lost ourselves. When you sent that distress call, you gave us a chance to be heroes. That is worth more than you know." did not fully understand, but she nodded slowly. These humans were strange, but perhaps strange was not always bad. Across the city, Sergeant Tony was leading a patrol through enemy territory. They had received reports of survivors trapped in the Eastern District. The area was crawling with. It was a suicide mission. Did not care, those people needed help. His squad moved silently through the ruins, avoiding enemy patrols, using the shadows for cover. Private Santos walked point, her young eyes sharp despite 3 days without sleep. Corporal covered the rear, his rifle ready, his mind focused. They found the survivors in the basement of a collapsed school. 47, mostly children and their teachers. They had been hiding for 5 days, surviving on rainwater and scraps. The teachers stared at the Marines in disbelief. One of them, an elderly male with a kind face, stepped forward. "Are you real?" he asked, "or am I dreaming?" Removed his helmet. "We are real, sir. We are here to take you somewhere safe." "But how? The monsters are everywhere." "Let us worry about that. Just stay close and stay quiet." Getting 47 civilians through enemy territory should have been impossible, but his squad made it happen. They moved slowly, carefully, stopping whenever patrols came near. It took 6 hours to cover 2 miles. Twice they had to fight. The first time, they ambushed a small patrol and eliminated them before they could call for help. The second time, they were spotted by a larger force. Santos took a hit to her leg. She did not scream. She just fell, rolled behind cover, and kept shooting. Ran to her, dragging her to safety while bullets flew around them. "You are going to be okay," he said. "Stay with me." "I am not going anywhere," she said through gritted teeth. "Help the others." They fought for 20 minutes, called for air support, and a Terran gunship arrived just in time, tearing the apart with its heavy weapons. When it was over, they counted the cost. Santos was wounded but would survive. 2 other Marines had minor injuries, but all 47 civilians were safe. The elderly teacher approached again. Tears were running down his face. "You risked your lives for us," he said. "You were hurt saving us. Why would you do this?" Thought about the question. He thought about his home, his family, the world he had left behind. He thought about why he had joined the Marines in the first place. "Because you needed help," he said simply, "and because we were there." The teacher bowed deeply. "I will tell my students about you. I will tell them that there are species in the galaxy who help others just because it is right. I will make sure they never forget." Felt something warm in his chest. He was not good with words. He was a soldier, not a poet. But he knew that this moment mattered. This was why they fought. This was why they died. Not for glory or conquest, but for moments like this. Back at the command post, Colonel received the news that the reinforcements had arrived early. Admiral herself was leading the relief force, 10 more ships, 2,000 more Marines. When her face appeared on the, could have cried with relief. "Colonel, what is your status?" she asked. "We are holding, Admiral, barely. They are regrouping for a major push. We need everything you have got." "You will have it. The galaxy is watching, Danny. Word has spread about what you are doing here. Species that have ignored humanity for centuries are paying attention now." "Good, maybe they will learn something." Smiled grimly. "Maybe they will. Hold on a little longer. Help is coming." The transmission ended. Turned to Ambassador, who had been listening nearby. "More of your people are coming?" she asked. "Yes, a lot more. And they will fight for us, people they have never met." "Yes." Was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice soft with wonder. "Your species is remarkable, Colonel. You terrify me and inspire me in equal measure." Laughed tiredly. "We have that effect on people." Outside, the sun had set completely. The city was dark except for the fires that still burned. Somewhere in the distance, weapons fired. The war was not over. The hardest fighting was yet to come. But the Marines were ready. They had always been ready. This was what they were made for. Not conquest, not glory, not profit. Just helping people who needed help. It was that simple, and that complicated, and that human. Day 5 of the battle brought the full fury of the Empire. 27 capital ships dropped out of hyperspace above. They filled the sky like a wall of darkness, blocking out the stars. Commander stood on the bridge of his new flagship, his eyes burning with hatred. He had been humiliated. His forces had been pushed back by primitives he had never heard of. Ships had been destroyed. Soldiers had been killed. His reputation was in ruins. Now he would have his revenge. All vessels advance on the Terran fleet, he commanded. No mercy, no prisoners, destroy everything. The armada moved forward like a hungry beast. On the bridge of the TSS Relentless, Captain Lisa watched them come. She had seen the tactical projections. She knew the math. 27 enemy ships against 12 Terran vessels. It should have been hopeless. But had not joined the Marines to fight hopeless battles. She had joined to win impossible ones. All hands battle stations, she announced over the ship-wide channel. This is it, people. Everything we have trained for comes down to this moment. Remember who we are. Remember why we are here. And give them hell. The first exchange of fire lit up the void. The Relentless shuddered as enemy weapons slammed into her shields. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in. Lieutenant Gregg worked his console with frantic speed. Shields down to 60%. Hull breach on deck 7. Sealing now. Return fire, ordered. Target their weapon systems. We need to slow them down. The Terran fleet fought with everything they had. Rail guns roared. Missiles streaked through space. Pilots flew with reckless courage, weaving through enemy fire to deliver killing blows. But they kept coming. For every ship the Terrans disabled, 2 more took its place. Admiral commanded the battle from her flagship, the TSS Valor. She was 62 years old, a veteran of more battles than she could count. She had seen good days and bad days. This was shaping up to be a very bad day. But she had a plan. All ships execute pattern Omega, she ordered. We cannot beat them head-on, so we will beat them smart. Break formation and scatter. Hit them from every angle. Make them chase shadows. The Terran fleet split apart like a flower opening. Each ship became its own wolf, hunting among the enemy pack. They did not try to destroy ships, they crippled them. A disabled ship was more trouble than a dead one. It needed rescue, resources, attention. The tactic worked better than anyone had hoped. The formation broke apart as ships tried to pursue individual targets. Commanders screamed conflicting orders. Chaos spread through their ranks. On surface, the ground battle had reached its peak. Colonel stood at the front lines, directing the defense. They had launched a massive assault on the refugee camps. Thousands of civilians huddled behind the thin line of Marine defenders. "Hold your positions," shouted. "Do not let them through." Sergeant and his platoon fought like demons. They were exhausted, wounded, running low on ammunition. But they did not retreat. They could not retreat. The people behind them had nowhere else to go. Private Santos fired her rifle until the barrel overheated. Then she picked up a fallen weapon and kept shooting. Her leg wound throbbed with every heartbeat. She ignored it. Corporal threw himself on a soldier who was about to kill a child. They rolled in the dirt, fighting hand to hand. Was smaller, weaker, but he was fighting for something bigger than himself. He found strength he did not know he had. His knife found the gap in the alien's armor. The died with a surprised look on its face. Sergeant Drake led a counterattack on the enemy's flank. Her squad was down to 8 soldiers from 15. They hit from the side, disrupting their advance, buying precious time. Drake took a plasma round to the shoulder. The pain was incredible. She kept fighting. "Fall back to position Bravo," she ordered, "covering fire now." Staff Sergeant Vince Morales did the impossible. Alone, Without orders, he commandeered a damaged transport and drove it straight into the enemy line. The vehicle was not designed for ramming, but Morales did not care. He plowed through the alien soldiers, scattering them like leaves. When the transport finally died, he jumped out shooting. He killed 6 more before his ammunition ran out. Then he picked up a metal bar and kept swinging. Other Marines saw what he was doing. The retreat became an advance. The line wavered. In orbit, the battle reached its climax. The TSS Defiance, a frigate commanded by Captain Barnes, found herself face to face with the command ship. Her vessel was heavily damaged, leaking atmosphere, fires burning on multiple decks. She had 63 crew members left, most of them wounded. Its flagship was right in front of her. Its shields were down. Its weapons were pointed elsewhere. It was vulnerable. Barnes looked at her tactical display. She looked at her crew. She made a decision. All hands, this is the captain. Abandon ship. Get to the escape pods now. Her first officer stared at her. Captain, what are you doing? What needs to be done? Go. The crew evacuated. Barnes stayed at the helm. She aimed her ship at the command vessel and pushed the engines to maximum. The TSS Defiance hit the enemy flagship at full speed. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface. Died without understanding what had happened. One moment he was commanding the battle. The next moment, his world was fire and pain and darkness. He never knew that a single human had chosen to die rather than let him win. The destruction of their command ship broke Without leadership, without coordination, they panicked. Ships began to retreat. The assault on the ground faltered. Admiral watched the enemy flee. Her eyes were wet with tears she would never admit to. All ships pursue and destroy. Do not let them regroup. The Terran fleet hunted the survivors for hours. By the time it was over, 17 ships had been destroyed or captured. The rest had fled. On the ground, the Marines cheered. They had won. Against impossible odds, against a superior enemy, they had won. But the victory came with a terrible price. Colonel walked through the battlefield after the fighting stopped. Bodies lay everywhere, and human alike. The ground was soaked with blood. He found Sergeant sitting against a wall, staring at nothing. His platoon had started with 40 soldiers. 12 were still alive. "We won," said softly. Did not respond for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. "Did we? Look around you, sir. Look at what it cost." Sat down beside him. They were quiet together, 2 soldiers surrounded by death. Finally spoke again. Barnes rammed her ship into their flagship. She saved us all. Closed his eyes. "I know. I heard the transmission," she said. "Tell them we held the line." "We did hold the line, because of her, because of everyone who died today." "Is it worth it, all this death for people we never met?" Thought about the question. He thought about the children he had seen today, alive because of Marine sacrifice. He thought about ambassadors' tears of gratitude. He thought about what humanity stood for, what it meant to be human. "Yes," he said, "it is worth it, it has to be, otherwise what was any of it for?" Opened his eyes, he looked at his commander, then he nodded slowly. "Okay," he said, "okay, then we keep going." "We keep going," agreed. "We always keep going." The sun was rising over. The first dawn of peace in almost a week. They emerged from their shelters, blinking in the light, hardly believing they were still alive. They had been saved by strangers from across the stars. Strangers who had paid the ultimate price for their survival. They would never forget. They would spend generations trying to repay a debt that could never be fully repaid. And somewhere in the void, human souls rested easy, knowing they had done something that mattered. 1 week after the battle ended, they held a ceremony in the ruins of their capital city. They cleared a space in front of the Grand Archive, sweeping away the rubble and ash. They built a stage from salvaged wood and metal. They invited every surviving Terran to attend. Colonel Danny stood at the front of the Marine formation. His dress uniform had been borrowed from a supply ship. It did not fit quite right. Behind him stood the soldiers who had fought and bled and died for a world that was not their own. Sergeant Tony was there, his face older than it had been 2 weeks ago. Private Maria Santos stood beside him, leaning on a crutch, her wounded leg still healing. Corporal Ben, Sergeant Drake, Staff Sergeant Vince Morales, and so many others. The survivors, the heroes. There were gaps in the formation, spaces where soldiers should have been standing. 53 Terrans had died in the battle for. Their names were written on a list that kept in his pocket next to his heart. Ambassador walked to the podium. She moved slowly, weighed down by grief and gratitude in equal measure. The entire government had been destroyed in the invasion. She was the highest-ranking official left alive. She looked out at the crowd. Thousands had gathered to witness this moment. They stood in silence, their four-armed bodies still and respectful. When I sent the distress call, I expected silence. For 3,000 years, my people have studied the galaxy. We have made contact with dozens of species. And in all that time, we learned one truth that we believed was universal. No one helps others for free. Every favor has a price. Every alliance is a transaction. She paused, gathering herself. We had nothing to offer. Our world was burning. Our people were dying. We were certain that our cry for help would disappear into the void, unheard and unanswered. Her eyes found Colonel. We were wrong. Humanity heard us. They did not ask what we could give them. They did not demand payment or alliance or submission. They simply came. They fought for us. They bled for us. They died for us. Her voice broke slightly. She steadied herself. When I asked their colonel why, he told me something I will remember until my last breath. He said that helping each other is supposed to be free. The crowd murmured among themselves. This was a concept they were still struggling to understand. I did not believe him at first, continued. I thought there must be some hidden motive, some secret agenda, but I watched these humans for days. I saw them share their food with our hungry children. I saw them carry our wounded elders on their backs. I saw them stand between our people and death, asking nothing in return. She turned to face the Marine formation directly. Terran Marines, the collective owes you a debt that can never be repaid, but we will spend the rest of our existence trying. From this day forward, we pledge eternal friendship to humanity. Where you go, we will follow. Where you stand, we will stand beside you. And if you ever send a distress call, we will answer, because you taught us what it means to answer. She gestured, and attendants brought forward a large cloth-covered object. When they removed the cloth, the crowd gasped. It was a statue carved from blue crystal, the most precious material on. The statue depicted a human Marine reaching down to lift a fallen. Every detail was perfect, from the folds of the uniform to the expression of determination on the human face. This monument will stand in our capital forever, said, and beneath it we will carve the names of every human who died to save us. Our children will learn their names. Our children's children will learn their names. 1,000 generations from now, they will still remember what humanity did here. She looked at Colonel. Will you speak? Had not prepared a speech. He was a soldier, not an orator, but he walked to the podium anyway, feeling the weight of every eye on him. He cleared his throat. Ambassador, the men and women behind me did not come here for statues or ceremonies. They came because you needed help. That is what we do. We are Terran Marines. When people call for help, we answer. He paused, thinking of all the things he wanted to say. Thinking of all the soldiers who should be standing behind him but were not. We lost good people on your world. Captain Barnes, who drove her ship into the enemy flagship to give us a chance. Lieutenant Pete Dawson, who died holding a bridge so civilians could escape. Corporal Amy, Private Kenny, Private Vance, and 48 others. They were young. They had families, dreams, futures. They gave all of that away so your people could live. His voice grew thick. He did not try to hide it. That is not a debt, Ambassador. That is a gift. The only thing we ask is that you remember them, and that someday when another species sends a distress call, you answer the way we answered yours. Bowed deeply, the deepest gesture of respect her culture knew. We will remember, she promised, and we will answer. The ceremony continued with songs and speeches, but barely heard them. He was thinking about his soldiers, about the battle, about what came next. After the ceremony, he found Admiral standing alone, looking up at the stars. "Hell of a thing," she said when he approached. "Yes, ma'am. The galaxy is watching us now. Word of what happened here has spread to every corner of known space. Species that ignored us for centuries are suddenly very interested in humanity. Is that good or bad?" Smiled slightly. "Both, probably. Some will see us as a threat, others will see us as hope. The universe just got a lot more complicated." Nodded, he had expected as much. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we go home, bury our dead, rebuild our ships, and wait for the next call." "You think there will be one?" "I know there will be. There are a lot of people out there who need help, Colonel, and now they know someone is listening." In the weeks that followed, humanity received 17 distress calls from species across the galaxy. Some were from civilizations under attack. Others were from worlds facing natural disasters. Still others were from peoples who had simply heard the story of and wanted to know if it was true. The Terran Marine Corps answered every single one. Not all the missions went well. Some ended in failure. Some cost lives. But they kept answering, kept fighting, kept helping, because that was who they were. Onda began to rebuild. They cleared the rubble, buried their dead, and started constructing a new future. But they never forgot what the humans had done for them. Ambassador lived to be very old. She spent her final years teaching young about the strange species that had come from across the stars to save them. "Why did they help us?" the children would ask, and would smile and say, "Because helping each other is supposed to be free. They taught us that, never forget it." The crystal statue stood in the heart of the rebuilt capital for 10,000 years. Generations of grew up in its shadow, learning the names carved in its base. And on a dozen worlds across the galaxy, species that had once believed the universe was cold and cruel learned a different lesson. Someone was listening, someone cared, someone would come. All you had to do was call. Sergeant Tony returned to Earth after the campaign. He retired from the Marines, got married, had children. He never talked much about, but his kids noticed that he always kept a small crystal figurine on his desk, a gift from a teacher whose students he had saved. Private Maria Santos stayed in the service. She rose through the ranks to become one of the most decorated officers in Marine history. She led the relief mission to Pella's Prime, the evacuation of Station, and a dozen other operations that saved countless lives. Corporal Ben went home to his wife and daughter. He taught his little girl to be kind, to help those who needed help, to stand up for those who could not stand for themselves. She grew up to be a Marine too. And somewhere out in the darkness between stars, distress calls continued to echo through the void. Cries for help from beings who had no one else to turn to. The Marines were listening. They were always listening. And when the call came, they answered. That was the nature of humanity. Strange, contradictory, capable of great cruelty and great kindness. Willing to cross the stars to help strangers. Willing to die for people they had never met. The galaxy did not always understand them, but the galaxy was learning. Help was out there, hope was out there. All you had to do was call. And they would come out of the smoke,